Hello everyone! My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are doing a 4-year update on using the NuvaRing, and I know this seems very random, and it kind of is. I just had the idea in my head. I was like, I have been on this for a really long time, and I should tell people about that, because when you are on YouTube, you get like 3 flavors of birth control video. You get one, absolute horror stories. You get people that are on the IUD and it tears their uterus and they have to get it removed with no anesthetic, and it's like, oh my god, that's horrible. But you also get things like 2 very dry medical delivery of here are the facts of 5 different types of birth control and all of the different percentages for how effective they are, and it's very dry. The last one you get is like a 3-month or a 6-month update on using a birth control method and sort of a shorter term review. And I do think all of those have their place, but I think also, ideally, aren't we kind of looking for a birth control that we can use for a long period of time? And, you might get someone that says at 6 months, oh, this is great and I love it. And then 2 months later, they stop because they have some kind of really bad side effect, or it doesn't work for their lifestyle, or it gets to be something where they just don't enjoy it anymore for whatever reason. And so I think it's good to hear that longer term outcome from using a birth control method. And I actually have been, again, on the NuvaRing for 4 years. I was on the pill before that, kind of off and on. And the reason why I switched is because, well, in part anyways, was because I knew 3 people that got pregnant while supposedly on the birth control pill in 2 years. And that is unusual, I think, but it really showed me how whenever you have a birth control method, you, in order to get full effectiveness, have to use it as closely as possible to what the manufacturer tells you to do. And so I was really scared. I wasn't even having vaginal sex at that point, and so I didn't really have to be worried about it, but I did want something that I knew was going to be reliable. So as soon as I decided I wanted to have vaginal sex, I could be ready just right away to start doing it and not have to alter my behavior in any way. So I sort of went through the process of looking at other birth control methods. I considered the IUD, but I also knew people that had had it put in and had had horrible, painful, nearly passing out experiences. And they had also said that their partners could feel the string inside. And so I was like, it seems like a lot of effort, and it's apparently really painful, and you do have to eventually get it taken out and put back in again with a new one. I didn't want something that wasn't going to be easily reversible, which means something that I can reverse myself. When you look at the implant, the shot, any of the IUD methods, those are all doctor visits to get them taken out, or in the case of the shot, it's just in there. You gotta wait till it's out of your system. And I knew a lot of people as well that the depot shot literally made them suicidal. It made all of their mental health issues way worse, and I did not want to have to go through that. And so just by process of elimination, it really came down to the NuvaRing. And so that is what I have been using for a long time now. And I would say the first 3 months I used it were a period of transition, which is, I think, true for most types of hormonal birth control. I was really moody. I was all over the place emotionally, and it took that time to settle down and find a rhythm. And also for me, part of it is I wasn't having vaginal sex, but I had always had really irregular periods. it would be months between them. They could be for 8 days, they could be for 3 days, 2 days. Like it was just really, really hard to keep track of like how my body was functioning. And so I wanted something that would like help also with that reliability. So I can't remember exactly how I used it when I very first started, but the usual way that people take it is you have it in for 21 days and then you take it out for 7 days. And during that 7-day period, you are still covered in terms of birth control and it being effective still, like having enough hormones, but you have a period during that week. And I learned pretty quickly on that you could have it in for either 3 weeks and then put in a new ring right away, or you could have it in for 4 weeks and then put it in right away. Because that 4th week, you are still covered in terms of hormone levels and everything else. You're not going through any really big changes. And so for me, I found I didn't really enjoy having that like 3 week in, 1 week out. I did feel like there was still sort of a little bit of a dip maybe in my hormone level, and I didn't really want to experience that. So for me, I went pretty early on to the 4 week in and then changing to a NuvaRing right away method, and that really worked for me. How I have managed remembering when to change my ring has been really easy. So I use Google Calendar, and I have a recurring item in my calendar. So every 4 weeks, I have an alert on my calendar and on my phone that says, time to change the ring. And I have that on my home screen. I have like a little mini calendar, and I look at that every single time I unlock my phone. It is a distinct label color, so I see it right away, and it's really easy to notice. I haven't had any issues that I can recall where I have forgotten to change it when I should. I think there was one time, like 2.5 years in, where I went home for Thanksgiving and I forgot that was the weekend I was supposed to change it. And so I missed changing it by like 3 or 4 days. But again, at that time, I wasn't having vaginal sex, and so that wasn't really an issue, but that was like the only time. And I remember just like frantically being on my phone and being like, is it okay if you leave the NuvaRing in for 5 weeks? Is it okay if you leave it in for blah, blah, blah? And it turns out most of the time, it's probably fine. If you leave it in for like 6 weeks, that's not good. Like you get into having to use backup methods or plan B at that point, but it's not like the end of the world where you now have to like restart your whole process of getting adjusted to the NuvaRing, because that was my fear. It wasn't that I could like accidentally be pregnant, but I was like, oh my God, that means my hormone levels are like down here. And so like, oh my gosh, that means I'm gonna have to go through that whole like 3-month period of being like absolutely just bananas with my emotions, and I don't want to do that. So I ended up not really having any big changes. There was a small bit of what's called breakthrough bleeding, where I had like very, 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 very light amount of blood for I think like 2 days, and that was it. And I went back just fine to using it as per usual for the foreseeable future. And I think there was one time as well where the NuvaRing was delivered late because I had moved and there was like an issue with changing my address. So I get the NuvaRing delivered to me. I get it in packs of 3, and I get it through a service called NuvaRing, and they deliver all different types of birth control. That is what I have done like the entire time I've been on it. It is so convenient. I have, again, 3 months of my birth control on me all the time, and that is a really, really nice peace of mind. I have never had any issues other than once, which was because I moved, where it was any sort of an issue getting it on time. It always shows up like at least a week early, I would say. And that is convenient as well, because if I have to go on a long trip and I'm going to have to change it like part way through, I don't have to get like a special refill or something. It's already there. It's already ready, which is really, really nice. And I very much enjoy it. And when I get it in packs of 3, you just keep it in the box it comes in the fridge, and it just chills there, and it's good. Never any issues with that. I mean, yeah, it's a little weird to keep your birth control in a fridge. Probably, if you have roommates, maybe not the best plan, but it is an option, and I have found that it works really, really well for me. There was one time though, I did actually stop taking the NuvaRing, and that was on purpose. So a while ago, I decided to get my hormones tested, and obviously being on the birth control ring, any method of hormonal birth control can alter the outcome of those tests. So I decided to go off of the ring. I think I had to be off of it for like 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and I went off of it for that time period so I could get the testing done. By the way, I don't know if maybe anyone cares about this, because I think some people may worry about like long-term hormonal changes because of being on birth control like this. The full panel was totally fine. Nothing weird with it, nothing outside of normal range. Everything was like smack in the middle of normal. So I didn't have seemingly any sort of long-term impacts from being on the NuvaRing for, I think it was like three and a half years at that point I was on it for. And getting back on it the second time, there was an adjustment period of like a month. It was not like it was when I was on it the first time, and it was that whole 3 months of just like, oh my God. It was like a month. It was like a full cycle of getting back to sort of the rhythm of how I would normally behave and respond to things. And that was definitely better. I think it was just my body was sort of used to it, and so it maybe could respond more quickly to it. I don't know. It didn't seem to be as intense as it was the first time. Now, there is some controversy when it comes to long-term skipping periods when you do the method that I do, which is 4 weeks in and then a new ring, because when you do that, you don't typically get a period. And at first, I was doing it where I would have a period and I would do a 3-week and then a 1-week removal like every couple of months. And eventually I just converted to sort of listening to my body. And right now I would say I have a period like 2 or 3 times a year maybe, and I just sort of listen to kind of what my body is doing. Like, am I kind of feeling bloated? Am I cramping? Am I having like period symptoms? Because the NuvaRing does affect your endometrial lining, which is what is shed when you have a period. And it's not like what would happen if you were building up that endometrial lining like fully every single month, not on birth control, and then you never shed any of it for months on end. It does affect how much original buildup there is to start with. And so when you do have a period, it's not typically as heavy, it's not as intense. Having a period 2 or 3 times a year seemed to work fine, and that's sort of where my body has been at in terms of like, okay, I need a refresher like every 4 months is sort of the pattern I have been on. And when that happens now, I do plan it to be within my normal routine of, instead of doing 28 days continuously, I do that 21 days, and then I leave it out for a full 7 days, and then I put in a new ring. Some people kind of mess with things, and they will only have the ring out for as long as they have flow, and when the flow stops, they will put in a new ring. But that can kind of mess with when you need to put in a new ring again, because then you end up with like a 25-day cycle or a 26-day cycle or a 29-day cycle. And if you don't remember to update that, it can lead you to leave things in for too long or not long enough before you change it again. And I just feel like it's better to keep things on a very regular schedule, because leaving it out for a full 7 days does keep you fully protected. And that is what we're really going for. So that is how I use it. And I would say that my periods are very light. Again, like I get maybe 2 to 3 days of full actual bleeding, but I can use either like a panty liner with a very light tampon or just a very light pad. I actually struggle to find things that are light enough to use that aren't like too absorbent. And kind of first world problems there, but it is like just to emphasize how light it is. And I think if you are someone that is struggling with really heavy periods, the NuvaRing may actually be a good solution for you if you have found that maybe other methods aren't giving you that relief that maybe you want. I have also found it to be very comfortable to wear. I literally right now I don't feel it. Like 98% of my life I don't feel it. If it ends up kind of getting lower down in the vaginal canal and it gets pretty close to my entrance, I can feel it there, which is actually good because then it reminds me that I need to like insert it up higher, and that really doesn't take any effort to do. It's super easy. If you can put in a tampon, you can put in a NuvaRing. They do also have an applicator that you can use as well if that's something that you just don't feel comfortable with. So there are options there. And yeah, so over the 4 years that I have been on it, I have considered switching to other methods. I'm going to look up the names here real quick. So there is one that came out recently that is basically the same thing as the NuvaRing, but it lasts for a whole year, and it is called NuvaRing, and it's literally the same. It's just like way thicker. It's like a big old chunky boy, and I didn't want to have something that big inside me all the time, honestly. Like, that was one of the main reasons why I did not switch, is I was like, oh, that seems like it could be uncomfortable. Like, it seems kind of bulky. I would rather have the regularity of changing something every single month and having that versus like, I feel like at a year, like, what if you forget by like 2 weeks that it's been a year? Like, I just feel like that's like too risky for, you could easily forget that it's been a year and you need a new one if you don't get it like automatically mailed to you, you know? So I didn't really want to try that. I also considered something called Phexxi, which is, I don't know how to describe it. It's like an injectable, but not an injectable in the depot shot way. It goes in your vagina and you use it whenever you have sex. And it is supposed to, I think, like alter the vaginal pH, so then sperm can't live in it. And it's kind of like a newer version of spermicide, and I didn't switch to that for 2 reasons. One, it's not as effective as the NuvaRing. Also, it can cause a lot of vaginal irritation, and that is like the main thing that people complain about using it, is it can cause vaginal irritation. I do believe I found a study that was comparing users of Phexxi to users of NuvaRing and other birth control methods and how long they stick with it based on customer satisfaction. And more people stayed with the NuvaRing than with Phexxi. Oh wait, no, actually it wasn't Phexxi. It was the patch. That was the other one that I was considering because I wanted to have maybe something I didn't have to remove, and I thought maybe it would be easier to have something on my skin. I did actually find a study comparing the NuvaRing to the patch in terms of long-term satisfaction and how likely they are to discontinue use. So I remember reading that, and I did see that more people are more likely to stop using the patch because of the side effects. In particular, irritation around the site where the patch is applied. And I didn't really want to deal with, again, changing birth controls and going through that whole like time period of adjustment to have something that was going to be really itchy and uncomfortable. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to stick with the NuvaRing. So I did briefly consider also changing to the patch, but in every single different matchup mentally that I went through between new methods, different ones, the NuvaRing always ended up winning, which I hope speaks to how good it is. So speaking of side effects from the NuvaRing, the only one that I have really had long-term is vaginal dryness. That is a really common side effect, and it's something that I deal with. I am pretty much used to it at this point, and it's not really something that bothers me too much, to be honest. I am sort of experimenting with ways to maybe make it less dry because it can be uncomfortable sometimes. But it's like, in terms of the range of possible side effects, like, oh, my vagina is just a little bit dry, like, okay, that's like not the worst. Like, I haven't had any issues with weight gain, anything involving issues with my mood or mental health, like nothing like that has happened, and that is really what I would want to avoid. Now, for one of the last things I want to talk about, this will be like the TMI section. The part that everyone cares about is, what is it like during sex? Because obviously it is inside your vagina, so people would wonder, like, okay, is it comfortable? Can you feel it? And I, for a really long time, didn't have vaginal sex. I didn't, that wasn't on my radar for things I wanted to do. And so my experience initially was always through like digital penetration. And when that would happen, sorry, I'm struggling to find like the words for how to describe this. Like when that would happen, I didn't really notice it. They didn't really notice it. I never had any issues with it coming out or like poking it or anything. Like it just didn't really matter that it was in there at all, to be honest. And I also liked kind of being able to be like, hey, here's like literally my birth control. It's in me, like you know it's there. And I think for some people, knowing that is kind of reassuring. Not that people like wouldn't trust me, but like I think like being on the other side, it is nice to know like visually, okay, I know for sure the birth control is in place that we talked about and agreed upon. Like just additional security is always good to have. When it comes to sort of my other choices around using the NuvaRing, because you know I was having anal sex, I wasn't having vaginal sex. And it was always really nice to have that reassurance that, you know, for example, if I was having outer course without a condom, or I was doing anal without a condom and maybe they came like outside of the anus, like I didn't have to worry and like get a panic attack and get plan B. Like I was like, okay, I know that this is like a 0.01% chance that anything could happen even if I wasn't on birth control. I think it's higher than that, but you know, hyperbole. It's nice to just know that even in sort of a situation of maybe a mistake or an accident that I was still going to be covered, and having that peace of mind, I think really helps you have a more positive experience. Now, actually, speaking of Plan B, I am not an expert on this. This is something I heard from actually my care provider at Planned Parenthood. I love Planned Parenthood. They are the best. Like I go there for everything that I need. They are awesome. And I was told that if you have the NuvaRing out for 2 days or less, you don't necessarily need to use Plan B, because that can actually mess with the effectiveness or something. It messed with something involving the NuvaRing, so it was actually better to put the NuvaRing in again as soon as possible, because it was likely that you would still be covered if the ring was out for 2 days or less during the second and third week, and in my case, the fourth week of using the NuvaRing. So that is just a little tidbit there. Definitely double check whenever I talk about anything medically related to the NuvaRing. Like always talk to your healthcare provider and what they have to say about the effectiveness and how to use it. Planned Parenthood is amazing. You can call them. They have a whole like thing on their website where you can go and like tell them, hey, I think I maybe messed up my birth control. Do I need to use Plan B or backup method or something else? And you can tell them, hey, this is what I was using, this is what happened, and they will tell you this is what you need to do as a next step. So that's really, really, really reassuring. I also was told, apparently, not to use oil-based or silicone-based lubricants while using the NuvaRing. That is not on their website as a manufacturer, but it is on Planned Parenthood's website. And I believe the reason for that is because there is a chance that the silicone or the oil in the lube could like coat the exterior of the NuvaRing and therefore make it less effective, because obviously in order to work, the NuvaRing has to like release out hormones. And if something is physically blocking that, then like it's not going to give you enough hormones, and then it's not going to be able to release the hormones. So going back to having the NuvaRing out, when you are on it, I have been told that you can take it out for 2 to 3 hours to have sex if you do happen to feel it. Personally, for me, it depends on the position that you are being like penetrated with, you know, digitally, but also with the penis. Like sometimes you can feel it, sometimes you can't. It depends on multiple factors. I have had sort of mixed experiences with that, where sometimes it's totally fine, other times you do feel it. But think about it, like if you are thinking about the full act of sex and the foreplay, everything else before penetration, you can leave the ring in for that, and then during the, I don't know, how long do people have sex for, the 10 to 15 minutes of actual penetration, like you can take it out and then put it back in after you have rinsed it off with cold to lukewarm water. Do not try to sanitize it by putting it in hot water, because body temperature is how it releases the hormones. So if you shock it with like boiling hot water, all the hormones are going to go out. And then those hormones are not going to be in your body. They're going to be going down your sink. So be cautious. I always use cold to cool water. Totally fine. It works. I've never had any issues with like taking out the ring, putting it on a towel, on a nightstand, and then rinsing it and putting it back in. I don't even use soap on it. I literally just like rinse it, and never had any issues with infection, yeast infection, bacterial vaginosis. Nothing has happened ever because of that. So it's usually pretty good. From my experience, if you are really sensitive, then you might want to just leave it in to be on the safe side so it's not being exposed to all that other stuff on surfaces or soap or anything else. Like, use your own best brain power and what works for your body and how sensitive or non-sensitive you are. So yes, once you are past that first week, according to my health provider, you can leave it out for 2 to 3 hours at a time to have sex when you are on those active ring weeks after that first week. It's a little bit confusing to keep track of, but if you can remember, okay, now I know I'm past my first week and this is an active ring, like I can leave it out for a short period of time for like, again, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, not necessarily a big deal. It's still going to cover you. If you are going to just kind of take it out and leave it out for 12 hours, 24 hours, kind of whenever throughout the month, not keeping track of when, like that is potentially going to be a problem for how effective it is. So, don't take it out unless you have to. And even then, like, keep track of how long that is. Like, literally, you could have, like, a timer on your watch or on your phone where you start it when you take out the ring, and then when you put it back in, you pause it. And then you just kind of keep track of how long in total you are keeping it out for, so you're not getting close to that threshold of having it out for too long in total. But overall, I have found it to be very comfortable. It's not really a problem in terms of sensation, in terms of any sort of irritation. Again, the only thing I have ever had to deal with is a little bit of dryness, and that's really it. I haven't had any major complaints from any partners, and I haven't had any issues with like pregnancy scares, anything like that. To be honest, I do like every 4 months, whenever I, haven't maybe had a period in a while because I am skipping it, I do just like pee on a stick just to like double check that nothing miraculous has happened, like just to have that peace of mind, because being on birth control doesn't impact whether or not you will get a positive pregnancy test or not. There are different hormones being measured and being put in your body. But yeah, I would say overall my experience has been very pleasant. Like, I love that I have something that I don't have to think about every single day, that I literally don't feel 97% of the time. That still works, and I don't have any issues with remembering it. I don't have any issues with getting it on time. Nothing like that at all. It is really the best of all worlds for me, because if I do decide I don't want to take it anymore, or I decide I want to do something else, I don't have to go to a doctor's office to reverse it. I don't have a big waiting period between going on something else. Like, it's very, very convenient. It's really everything I could want in a birth control. I would maybe attempt NuvaRing at some point, and that is really the only thing I see myself changing to at some point. Now, if my body changes more and the dryness becomes a lot of irritation, very itchy, painful, anything like that, there are many topical solutions for dryness. There are supplements that you can take. There are ways to get around that if that is a very bothersome side effect for you, but it hasn't really been for me. And unless that changes so it gets more severe, that is really, I think, the only thing that would get me to stop taking it, unless for some reason I started to plan a family, So that is, I think, everything that I wanted to share today about the NuvaRing. Again, if you ever have any questions about the NuvaRing, the Planned Parenthood website is a great resource, and go to their clinics, get an appointment. You can go to them to talk about birth control options, and they can tell you and verify what I said here about time you can have it out for, or having it in for 4 weeks versus 3. Anything that you are wondering about, you should ask a medical provider. I am just relaying what I remember a medical provider told me. I would link to resources below, but I can't because YouTube will definitely flag it is being pornography, because that is the age that we live in. That is an ongoing problem I have had, but suffice to say, there are many other resources if you want to kind of just verify those medical things, anything I talked about in this video. If you do have any other questions for me about using the NuvaRing, you can leave them down below. I would love to be able to check up with you all, answer any sort of remaining questions. If you have a medical question, like, help, is this normal? Help, I'm having this discharge. Like, not that, I'm not a doctor. Again, please go talk to a professional. But if you're wondering about maybe something that I didn't cover here, I would be more than happy to answer. And yeah, that's everything. Oh, I will say, okay, one last thing. I do have a funny story. So I was getting sugared. I was at the sugaring place. It was like in one of those periods during COVID when you could still like go and do things kind of with the mask on. And I was there. I was getting sugared, and for some reason, this technician I always see, like, we're on very friendly terms. They know what I do for a job. Like, they just don't care. They're like, listen, I am literally removing hair from your vulva. There is nothing too intimate at this point. So we were talking about birth control and stuff, and she told me that when she was on the ring, she used it, and they left it in, and then it came out on her partner's member, like a ring. Like, it was like a ring toss game, and it had gotten on the penis. And it was like, oh my god, I can't believe you told me this story. So it can come out. It can be removed by a penis. It can be removed from like having a bowel movement. If you have like a really strong bowel movement, other contractions in your vagina, in your anus, like that can actually force you to like push it out. I've never had that happen where it's come out by accident, where I didn't plan it because of like one of those things. It's only ever come out because of like a hooked finger, basically, is the only thing. But yeah, it can happen, and when it does, it is comical. But if you literally put it back in 2 seconds later, it doesn't really matter. So anyways, funny story to end us on there. I hope that you all enjoyed this. If you have not already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics, and occasionally sex education like this one here. If you do want to support my work, the best way that you can do that is with Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.